What if I told you that a part of your brain can see even when you are completely blind? This isn't science fiction, it is a real, documented, and utterly baffling medical condition that forces us to question the very nature of our own consciousness. For centuries, we've been haunted by a single powerful idea, an intuition so deep it feels like common sense. It's the idea that somewhere inside your skull, there is a you in the driver's seat. Think of it like a tiny theater in your head. Your eyes, your ears, your senses, they're all just feeding information to a screen, and sitting in the best seat in the house is the real you, the witness, the conscious observer, watching the movie of your life unfold. This command center is where the understanding happens, where the decisions are made, where the lights of consciousness are truly on. This idea, what philosophers call the Cartesian theater, feels right, doesn't it? But what if it is completely wrong? What if there is no central witness? No little person in your head? What if consciousness is something far stranger, far more distributed, a trick of the brain's incredible parallel processing? To tear down this comfortable old theater, we need a wrecking ball, and science has given us the perfect one. It is a phenomenon called blindsight. Imagine waking up after a stroke or an accident. The world on your right side has vanished. Not turned black, not blurry, just gone. A doctor maps out this massive hole in your vision, a scotoma. When a light is flashed in that area, you see nothing. You experience nothing. As far as your conscious mind is concerned, you are completely and utterly blind in that spot. But then the doctor asks you to do something absurd. They say, "I'm going to flash a light in your blind spot, and even though you can't see it, I want you to guess if I did." You feel ridiculous, but you play along. And a strange thing happens. You guess correctly. Not just once or twice. You guess correctly 80%, 90%, sometimes even complete of the time. They show you a horizontal line or a vertical line in your blind field, and you correctly guess its orientation. They show you a shape, and you can identify it. You are blind, yet you can see. Welcome to the world of blindsight. At first glance, this seems like the ultimate proof of a philosophical zombie, a person who can process information, who can function, but has none of the internal, subjective experience, none of that conscious juice that makes life what it is. The visual machinery is working, the information is getting in, but the witness in the theater isn't seeing the show. It seems to perfectly separate the mechanics of perception from the magic of consciousness. But when we look closer, the story gets much, much weirder, and that simple zombie explanation completely falls apart. Here's the detail that everyone misses, the crucial clue that changes everything. The blindsight patient doesn't just spontaneously say, "Hey, I have a weird hunch there is a vertical line on my right." They don't act on this information freely. In the classic experiments, they have to be prompted. The experimenter says, "Okay, a stimulus might appear. Now make a guess." They need a cue, a tap on the shoulder, a sound that tells them it is time to access this strange, ghostly information. Without that cue, the information just sits there completely unused, completely inaccessible to the person's cognitive system. Think about the difference. If you consciously see a cup on a table, you can decide to talk about it, pick it up, ignore it, whatever. The information is available to your entire system for planning, speaking, and acting. For the blindsight patient, the information is locked away in a basement, and they only get the key when the experimenter tells them to go look. This is radically different from what we might call hysterical blindness, another condition where people claim they can't see, but their eyes are perfectly fine. Those patients are fascinating because they often perform souben worse than chance when asked to guess. Their brain is clearly getting the visual information, but it is using it to actively Sunday avoid getting the right answer, bumping into chairs with an uncanny knack. Their system is using the information just in a strange, self-sabotaging way. But the Blindsight patient's brain isn't doing that. It is just passively holding the data. So what does this tell us? It suggests consciousness isn't about some special feeling being added to information. It might be about information becoming globally available across the brain's networks. But let's push this further with a thought experiment. What if we could train a Blindsight patient? Imagine we set up a biofeedback system. Every time a light flashes in their blind spot, a part of their brain registers it. We rig a machine to detect that neural signal and immediately play a soft tone in their ear. Flash, tone, flash, tone, over and over. Soon, the patient learns to associate the tone with the hidden visual event. Now, we take away the tone. We ask them to guess when to guess. We ask them to press a button whenever they feel the spirit move them. What would happen? Maybe nothing. Maybe the information is just too buried. But what if, through practice, they get better? What if they start to develop an internal feel for when a stimulus has arrived, even without the external tone? They are, in essence, learning to listen to the subtle signals of their own brain processing information they cannot see. If their reliability gets high enough, say 95% accurate, they could now start to use this information deliberately. They could adopt a conscious policy like, whenever I get that funny feeling that something is in my blind spot, I am going to turn my head to look. At that point, is he still unconscious of the stimulus? The line has become incredibly blurry. He is now consciously and deliberately acting on information that he claims not to consciously perceive. What would you call that? Folk psychology doesn't have a word for it. But we don't need to imagine. We can look at a real patient, a man known as DB, one of the most studied cases of Blindsight. DB was a classic case. Prompt him, and he could guess with stunning accuracy. But his doctors discovered something amazing. If a stimulus in his blind field moved too fast, he didn't need a cue. The motion itself was so powerful that it became self-cueing. He could spontaneously, without any prompting, report the direction of the motion and even trace it with his hand. So what did DB say it was like to experience this fast motion? Did he say, I had an unconscious urge to report motion? Number. He was insistent. Of course, he was consciously aware of it. He said, how else would I be able to report it? This is the smoking gun. When the information is strong enough, when it breaks through and becomes available for spontaneous report and voluntary action, we call it consciousness. It seems consciousness isn't a single, magical event happening in a central theater. It is a status that information achieves in the brain. It is what happens when data wins the competition for attention and gets promoted, broadcasted widely to all the different agencies of the mind, the language centers, the planning centers, the action centers. Blindsight isn't a window into a zombie soul. It is a glimpse at the brain's backstage, showing us information that failed its audition, data that never made it to the main stage of global availability. It dismantles the idea of a central witness and replaces it with a bustling, chaotic, competitive democracy of information. So the next time you simply look at an apple and see that it is red, remember that this seemingly simple act is the victorious outcome of a massive, silent war of information processing in your brain, a war you are not a witness to because you are the outcome of the war itself.